My wonderful, beautiful, amazing followers, fledglings to all humans out in this world. I'm Gabriella from Gabriella's Vampire Tarot, and for this evening, I'm going to be sharing another one of Gabriella's bedtime stories about the Count of Saint Germain. Okay, well, I'm sure a lot of you guys know about some of these stories, and well, the thing is, it's just like even the Casket Girls and the Carter brothers before that. Those are all true stories and stuff like that, including the Count of Saint Germain. But the whole vampire theories behind it is always just a bit on the questionable side because a lot of humans pretty much just wonder, do vampires actually exist? Well, the thing is I was pretty much, asleep in my coffin around the time that he was around, so I didn't really ever get a chance to meet the guy. But the thing is when I actually heard from the human, that, hey, well, when he was in New Orleans, when he was actually traveling, also, like, with some of his friends, but also, that he was also gaining a lot of insight from me as his vampire. The thing is, it's like, yeah, there is apparently a mansion in New Orleans, where he more or less resided, around the year of 1902 to 1904. So if any of you guys, I don't know, but the thing is, it's interesting because, it's like normally, yeah, just like even with the Carter brothers, nobody would have ever suspected, a lot of, these people that were considered vampires, perhaps. And just like even, with the Count, he came across as a very charming and loving and very caring guy, and he hosted a lot of beautiful, lavish balls and parties and stuff like that. So a lot of humans, they pretty much just think, oh, wow, this guy, he knew how to really, will lift spirits. He really, had so much within him. I mean, this is all, what I get from the human that, well, when he went on to, some of these tours and stuff like that, and even some of the stories that he even showed me and read to me and stuff like that. Well, it's like, and that's very interesting because, it's like a lot of, these considered, like, wrongdoers, bad people, that have, committed all kinds of heinous crimes and activities for that matter, tend to always come across as very loving and charming. I mean, when you look about how the whole, sequence of events about a lot of these, well, yeah, humans that are incarcerated right now, well, they all came across as being, well, so charming and loving that nobody would have suspected anybody, like even the Count for that matter, to even, well, him will be considered a vampire, right? Well, the thing is, it wasn't like, it's like, it more or less it kind of resembles the whole Carter brothers story, so I just really wonder, it's like if they're somehow intertwined in other ways, but the thing is, it's like how, these people, it's like these humans, they, attend these beautiful balls, parties, get togethers, what have you, and stuff like that. And then, well, suddenly there's always that one woman, just like even in the story of the Carter brothers, that manages to escape, whether it was in the, the home of the Carter brothers or even the mansion of the Count of the Count, and suddenly, this woman is taken to the hospital because, the Count supposedly tried to bite her or did bite her. So, and then of course, the police are always very skeptical, as, they should be, when it comes to, the stories about vampires, that start biting people or start, well, targeting people and stuff like that. Even in modern day stories, it's like the human even shows me these media videos of these girls that say, oh, I think I came across a vampire, stuff like that, and I think, most likely not, but of course I can't say 100% for sure. I've never been to any of these places. Yes, I've been to France, but yet, the point is, it's like, well, vampires, it's like, do they really exist in modern day world? So, but of course, back to the story is, so she gets taken off to, to the hospital just to get, checked and stuff like that. And so, and, the police, they manage to actually, meet the Count, and, he comes across as loving, and so he promises the next day to show up at the police station, to get, interrogated and stuff like that. But he never shows. Okay, here's where the situation starts happening where you just wonder what's going on here. I thought we had a more or less, this plan. They were supposed to show up, and then, all we have to do is ask you a few questions. He never shows. Okay. So the police go back to his home. They manage to break in. That makes, unless you pretty much have like a warrant and stuff like that, it almost just seems like, the police just really have no business to be doing that. But okay, they manage to get into his house, and he's not there. But what they do also find is a lot of bottles, these unmarked bottles apparently with a lot of red liquid inside of it. Okay, does that mean it's blood? They say, it's a smell like of decay, right? Okay, that's what old blood, often does smell like. It's just, it's not, well, nice to the human, even, the human just kind of like looks at me whenever I sometimes have my feedings and just thinks, how can you even manage that? But of course, he does that always in the form of humor, so, and then I just have to kind of just think humans. But other than that, I just think, okay, so what have you guys, are there any New Orleans natives out there? What do you guys actually think about the story? Have you guys even come across any kind of sensations, feelings, thoughts, perceptions? I mean, have you guys ever attended those New Orleans, like haunted, tours and stuff like that? What did you guys think about it? Did you guys, feel any kind of like of the Count's spirit somehow, his energy? Did you guys ever come across, anything regarding the Count? Well, do you even know, well, where he managed to relocate towards and stuff like that? So, but that is usually the case. I mean, I think a lot of humans, it's like they pretty much, want to impersonate like vampires. They want to pretty much just think, yeah, but then, but of course, it's like I still have to keep my, I have to keep my identity a secret and stuff like that. Because I'll tell you guys something. Because a few days ago, I know, it's like a few days ago, I actually, before, heading off towards this big, grand All Hallows Eve, the human and I, we actually had a European tour. We went through different types of, countries, like somewhere in France and Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, stuff like that, a couple other places, Austria as well. But of course, we traveled after midnight, and I just kept myself as very, clandestine as possible. And even, well, the human, he was just actually kind of speeding through, a lot of these opera houses, right? Because, I just kind of wanted to get a feel of what it was like. I mean, I've never been inside an opera house before, so, but I've always kind of wanted to know. I mean, if any of you guys, have gone to any opera houses? What operas have you guys ever seen? Concerts, music, classical, jazz, different types and stuff like that. Because, well, pretty soon we're gonna actually, we'll set up this big trailer. It's like, I mean, of course, it's all the humans, doing. It's like I'm just the product, but he's actually the designer and creator of it all. But we were just kind of traveling through, and I just thought, wow, just to kind of get a feel of being in different countries, right? I mean, it's like, well, France is kind of like a common ground for me, so I pretty much, enjoy kind of watching, or just kind of getting the feel of it. I mean, but other than that, I just kind of, thought it would be interesting just to kind of share some, other stories like that. But I just think, well, what do you guys, do you guys actually, think that he was a vampire, the Count of Saint Germain, or do you guys think those are just fables and stuff? But anyway, I just kind of wanted to share another one of my of Gabriella's bedtime stories with you all. I hope you guys are having a beautiful, wonderful slumber. I hope everything is working out for you all. And if you guys are interested in more Dracula, which is going to be presented next week, and so forth, what have you, and also the upcoming performance and stuff, I mean, I wonder what you guys all think about that. But other than that, I love you guys incredibly. Thank you again so much for joining me this beautiful evening. I hope all is going well, and as per usual, take excellent good care of yourself.